So in other words, you're really only saying yes to life,
Yes.
embracing life,
Yes.
as he always says we should, if you would be willing to
With
do
that kind of
over and
consequence.
over again
That's
what
right.
you're doing
That's
now,
right. Yes.
and only ever
Yes.
this.
Yes. I think to go on very much further than that and try to produce geometrical or mathematical equations in order to prove either the possibility or the impossibility of these views, which has been tried, has been done, doesn't seem to me to be terribly
Doesn't
sensible.
beat the point. In other words, it's a huge metaphor. Really.
It is a huge metaphor, and of course a
think?
great deal must be said about Nietzsche's uses of metaphors.
Well, say
Yes.
just something about
Yes.
it, because
Yes.
it's very relevant at this
Yes,
point.
I think I think we are in the habit of taking things literally in a way in which doesn't make sense as far as a great many of his statements are concerned. You spoke to begin with about his grand style, and I think it is an extraordinarily powerful, effective style. If I ask myself where it derives from, I think it derives from a strange invention, a strange discovery he seems to have made of placing his discourse, his language, somewhere halfway between metaphor and literal meaning. And this is something which very, very few people, certainly very few German writers, have done before him. He stands entirely on his own as far as thinking is concerned. You have mentioned that, and we've seen how he attacks every tradition in the West. Where he does find his precursors is in the style. And Montaigne and Pascal and La Rochefoucauld are his favorite authors, and that whole aphoristic style, I think, derives a tremendous lot from them. And it's not only me saying it, it's himself saying
Yes.
it. And this style, which is pitched halfway between metaphor and literal statement, is something quite extraordinary, and I think unless we understand it for what it is, we are going to misread him. I have a quotation which I think gives an example of what I have in mind. When he talked about the terrible deprivation that he felt 19th century people experienced through what he called luridly the death of God, he wrote as follows. He says, "Rather than cope with the unbearable loneliness of their condition, men will continue to seek their shattered God, and for his sake they will love the very serpents that dwell among his ruins." Now you see this mixture of, on the one hand, conceptual thinking, I mean loneliness and condition, are abstract terms belonging to conceptual thought. On the other hand, you've got the serpents glistening somewhere through the ruins of the shattered God. Well, that, and the refusal, I think, to go beyond that, in other words, to write out the theory behind the metaphors, I think essentially constitutes what he's about.
And it does give us, the readers, a problem. This fusion of poetry and metaphor on the one hand with concepts, hard concepts on the other, gives us a problem about how to take him. And that's really implicit in what you've just been saying. This leads to the fourth of the four themes of the later philosophy. We've talked now briefly about the will to power, about the Superman, and about his doctrine of the eternal recurrence of time. What you've just been saying about his use of metaphor leads us to the fourth of the four main themes in the later work, which is his notion that life is to be understood aesthetically. And I suppose the point here is that if there's nothing outside this world, no God, no transcendent realm or anything, then any meaning or justification that life has must be meaning derived from inside itself. So that, like a work of art, I mean, the only meaning a work of art has is what it, so to speak, gives itself. I mean, it doesn't derive its meaning from outside. Is that...
well, that certainly is a very fair way of coming close to what he's after. In the very first of his books, The Birth of Tragedy, he uses this phrase 3 times. It's only as an aesthetic phenomenon that the being of man and the world are eternally justified. It's a very complicated sentence, and I don't think I want to go into all the details of it. But what he's saying essentially is this. The greatness of the early Greeks, of the pre-Socratics, lay in their tragedy. Their tragedy was a way of facing the worst aspects of human life, that is, its transitoriness, its impermanence, its corruptness, its dependence upon forces greater than yourself, and to make of these a major tale, a story, a wonderful tragedy. And this he applies in the largest, in the most cosmic possible sense. And he's asking, as indeed I think Shakespeare did occasionally, he's asking, is the whole world really to be taken seriously? Or is it not a great game, a great play, some kind of drama played out by we do not know who? And if there is to be a justification, mind you, justification is the phrase he uses, which is a very dicey word to use in this context, because, of course, it's a judicial phrase, isn't it? Yeah. But if there is a justification for man being here and being what he is, maybe it is simply as part of this huge cosmic drama. And a great deal of his thought, and I think of some of his most interesting and greatest thought, goes precisely into rehearsing and trying to make sense of this aesthetic justification of man.